in Georgia, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful night here in Florida. There's no stars in the sky, but it's still bright out here.
Oh,
You know,
I'm sorry. I got beautiful stars in the sky, enjoying this
it's just
wonderful night.
I just looked up and I was like, hey, there's no stars whatsoever in the sky.
You guys got
But
too
it's all
much
right.
light. You got to come out to the
That,
country.
that's true. Way too much light, not enough country,
Not enough country.
not enough whatsoever. Alrighty, so let's get into what we're here for the second time. By the way, for the people who don't know that we've done this once
Once
before,
before.
and we we did a whole episode that was really good, by the way,
Oh, it was amazing.
and technology was just like,
Nope.
no, we're not doing it.
Apparently, and I found this to be true with my recordings in general. It seems that there are certain topics and certain discussions that aren't allowed to be had, and somehow magically those topics and discussions end up disappearing into the ether. So we've taken precautions this time around. I think that we got it this time.
We definitely got it this time, and actually that describes the government really well. Actually,
I think it does. And it's kind of scary considering the climate that we are living in now when you want to sit down and have topics of unity discussed across the board, and the government is working so hard to keep us divided.
yeah, it disappears, kind of like our last episode after 56 seconds.
56 seconds, that was the total time. It wasn't even a minute and there was no audio.
We couldn't even get a full minute. They're just like, you know what? You're not having this conversation. We're shutting
Shut
this
it
down.
down.
It's over.
And that's why we're aptly titling this on the Wiccan Conservative page, Fixing the Divide. That's what we're attempting to do here and answer some burning questions that, are plaguing the minds of society today.
Pretty much. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered by people that don't necessarily go with the grain of others. We've had many conversations, and from the conversations that we've had, I would say that we don't necessarily just go with what we've heard or with what people say and just take it. No, like we have our own mind, we have our own thoughts, we have our own opinions, and we're not afraid to speak on those opinions regardless of what other people think.
And experience. I think that the two of us have found through multiple conversations that, what we're experiencing isn't exactly what's being portrayed around us at this time.
That's very true. Very true. Um, yeah, so let's. I feel like we should just get into it. Like, let these people know that we had a great episode before, and it's going to be even greater now.
I agree.
Now, I think that further down the line than the last time we tried to do this the first time.
We are further, and we are still recording. I'm still good on my end. Are you good on your end?
I'm great on my end.
Wonderful. So today I just wanted to ask some very basic questions and start having a discussion about the hot topic of police brutality, and come to maybe a generalized consensus of how we can move forward with this whole defund the police, the racist divide in America, and really bring it to the people's attention that we aren't quite as divided as they want us to be.
No, we're definitely not. And like as far as the defunding the police thing is concerned, I wouldn't necessarily say defund it. I would say give more funds because we need to train these police officers the right way. Like we don't, not police officers, so we don't really know how they were trained before.
No.
And so as far as these bad cops, because that's what I'll label them, these bad cops, I don't know if were being trained the way that they're acting or they're just over abusing their power. But I would say that they just need to be retrained correctly, and they need to be, I guess you could say, forced to
A higher
do
standard.
it how they were perfect. They should be held at a higher standard to actually use what they were trained in the field, and the things that are happening now wouldn't be happening if they used their training. I'll go with that.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it starts with how an officer approaches a situation. Um, from the second they step onto a scene, where we'll make it real simple and easy and say that they come up upon a suspect in the commission of a crime, and how they should act when they come across the suspect who is actually committing a crime. Now, we could talk about what is a crime and what isn't a crime, but I think that that would confuse a lot of things. So we'll keep it real basic and just divide it into violent and non-violent crime.
Right. So, in my opinion, now this is just our opinions. A non-violent crime. If it's a non-violent crime, you definitely should not even think about using your weapon. It is a non-violent crime. So basically, it's probably like something as like a petty theft or
Shoplifting.
probably like shoplifting, like an argument. Like somebody probably called the police because two people were arguing and they thought that it could go more
Noise
or whatever.
complaints.
But yeah, like like a noise complaint. Like you really feel like you need to pull your gun out for a noise complaint? No, put it away. Talk to the people. Figure out what's going on, and basically resolve the issue. Like if it's a nonviolent complaint, then you basically just need to have a conversation with everybody who's involved and then solve the situation. Like a nonviolent complaint should never go violent.
Correct.
Ever. Now, if it's a violent complaint, like a violent crime, like a shooting or bank robbery or a domestic issue, most likely involving a weapon or some sort, then obviously you're going to be more leaning towards I may or may not have to use my weapon. So if you're an officer and you come up to a scene that is possibly a violent situation, then you have to gauge it a certain way. So say if the person has a weapon, right? Then obviously you're gonna pull your weapon. But like if it's a knife, if you have a knife, then you should probably just be going for your taser, or no, your taser, because you might want to be a little distance from somebody that has a knife. But like if you have a gun and then they have a knife, I don't understand why you feel like you need to shoot somebody because they have a knife when you have a taser on your other hip. So it's just like I feel like a lot of cops don't really think about that too much, and they just initially go for their gun. Now, if the other person has a gun, then sorry, then if you're a cop, then you need to go for your gun. that's a different story. But if one person has a knife or a bat or something like that, then you need to go for your taser.
I would agree to a certain extent. Obviously nonviolent crimes, and I think that you hit home with that point where you feel that the officer should come along and attempt to have a conversation with the parties involved. And actually, that's something that I don't hear very often when we talk about police training. And how people oriented are they? How much do they train, like you said, just diffusing situations, talking with citizens, um, especially in this day and age, you don't see a lot of officers that make it a point to be at community activities, to get involved with the people who live in their communities. A lot of police officers are commuting from one community that they live in to go police another. So there's kind of a detachment when it comes to the citizens of the jurisdiction that they're in charge of. And I think that that plays a big part into how safe they feel on the job. And when you bring it
Right.
around to violent crime, I think that, again, there are circumstances that dictate using non lethal force versus lethal force. But say you come across a murder scene with the murderer who has a knife and is still on the scene and is acting erratically, disobeying commands, basically resisting any of the officers' commands or directions, we get into, when that violent situation kind of escalates and turns into any type of resistance. At what point do you consider a suspect resisting arrest during the commission of a crime? We want to be extremely clear here and not get into the gray of, oh, did they commit the crime? Didn't they commit the crime? You're watching the perpetrator in the moment, and it's not your job to figure out who's doing what. You just need to command and control the situation. I agree. How
Right.
then do we stop these people from resisting, even just not listening to police commands?
Well, I think that's the divide right there, because a lot of people or police officers consider verbal counteraction with arrest. Like, just because somebody is yelling at you or trying to explain something to you doesn't necessarily mean that they're resisting arrest. So if you feel like that you need to be violent to try to contain somebody who's just trying to talk to you, then you're wrong. Now, if somebody is becoming physical with you or physically trying to resist arrest, then as an officer of the law and someone who is supposed to try to get a hold of the situation, then if you feel like you need to overstep your boundaries a little bit to try to get the situation under control, then I'm okay with that. Like, if it's violent, then you need to do what you have to do to subdue the suspect. But if you're just talking and the person is just like verbally communicating with you but not being violent, then you have to handle that in a certain. You have to handle that differently than you would a violent suspect.
I think that's a good point, and I think that's why it's so important to make that distinctive line between violent and non-violent offenses, because obviously, like you said, in a violent offense, you would probably be a little bit more lenient towards a even hint of deadly force, as in drawing your weapon and taking control of the situation, whereas in nonviolent offenses, like you said, just the fact that an officer gets disrespected sometimes leads to the drawing of the weapon and escalates everybody's tension.
Exactly.
So do you think that
And people people have to realize that disrespecting a police officer isn't acting violently.
no, no,
So you have these certain police officers who, if they feel like they've been disrespected, that they have to retaliate in a certain way. Now, these are the police officers that we do not need in the streets,
right? Somebody
because,
who
like,
has a fragile ego.
right, like if you have an ego issue, then you do not need to be a police officer, because you can't differentiate the difference between a non-violent and violent action.
Right. Which also, was going to tie into my next question is, do you think that more education about not only, officers learning about laws. Now I know that they learn the laws and there are many laws. Don't get me wrong. It's really hard to keep up with the new laws on the books every day. There's a piece of legislation that comes out, and I understand that. But do you think public education might help even a little bit too? Now, I know that there's officers that have gone off on people who know their rights, and that's where we talk about that ego coming into play. But what about people
Mm-hmm.
who are completely wrong about the process and who are trying to plead their case to the officer, and it's not the officer's job to decipher whether you're guilty or innocent. At the end of the day, you got to go to a court of law for that.
Well, as an officer, then you would know just by the situation, and you need to explain that to the suspect. It's just like, hey, like, you broke a law. Like, I'm not here to determine whether you're guilty or innocent enough, or, like, you're just, I have to do my job. So therefore, I have to take you to the station, because what we have seen is that you broke the law. So I have to do my job to take you to the precinct, book you, and then when you get in front of a judge, you can explain your side of the story.
Now, I watched a
And
lot of
it's up
cops
for,
in the day, and they did. I think that they were really good at explaining that at one point in time. But even now, when you see people get arrested or you watch live police shows, they don't even so much as read them their Miranda rights anymore.
no, they don't. And that's another problem, because if you don't read somebody their Miranda rights, and then they go to court and they know, like, say, okay, so if they know their rights, and they know that if a cop doesn't read them the Miranda rights, and they go to court and they state that to the judge, the case is automatically thrown out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just that fast. So
And
it's, people need to know what their rights are, and that comes with educating yourself about this situation. Like, you need to educate yourself the about the police, about your laws, your constitutions, everything. Like, you have to educate yourself so you know what the police can do and what they can't do, and what you can do and what you can't do.
I agree. And I think that, even just having the police reiterate those basic rights to you would help a lot of the misconception of what was happening at the time of an arrest.
Right.
So
That would eliminate a lot, actually.
here's another hot topic question. Should men and women be held to the same standards? And in addition to their regular training, We know that they go to the police academy and they come out of the police academy and they're required to do, so many refresher courses. But do you think that adding maybe a physical test to their everyday training schedule, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, depending on workload and of course being out on the street and work home life balance, um, should men be equal to women? Should women have to give the same physical requirements to the job? I know that they lowered the standards for at least the women that go into the army. They're not held to the exact same standards as the men. Is that negatively affecting our police force? Do women feel like they have to draw their weapons more?
I feel like absolutely. I feel like regardless of the gender, if you're a police officer, then you should definitely be held to the same standard. Because the moment where you expect them to not be under the same standard is where we lose. Where you would think that men are supposed to act a certain way, and then women are supposed to act a different way. So I mean, not like 9 times out of 10, if there's a male partner, then they will be either paired with a male partner or they will be paired with a female partner. Not often do you see two female partners paired with each other.
I think that's a really
So
good point.
so do I think that female officers would be faster to draw their weapon? Um, Probably not. To be completely honest, like I think male officers will be more privy to draw their weapons faster than a female officer, to be honest.
Interesting. I have the opposite opinion.
Really?
The exact opposite opinion, and for the simple fact that I feel like women just have a preconceived notion to um feel danger more intensely, or feel that she's not adequate enough for the situation. So in my opinion, I haven't had any real experience with a female officer, but I've always been under the impression that she would have more to prove, so it would be easier for her to subdue or overtake a situation having her weapon drawn.
Now, I do feel like maybe some women try to, I guess you could say, like over compensate maybe a little to where they feel like that they have to act a little tougher than their male partner
Mhm.
for, I mean, obvious reasons, but I don't know. Like I still feel like that male, not male, but female officers are a little bit more compassionate than the male officers.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because I've always been looking at it as just a physical sense of the situation, but now that you bring it up, yeah, maybe women do kind of look at things in a different light and have that little bit of extra empathy, I think is the right word. Men
Yeah,
men tend to lack empathy. They're very situational, and what's happening in the moment is what captures most of their attention. Where women, we analyze everything.
that's very true. Because sometimes men just don't care, and women kind of think a little bit more before they react to things.
Right. I think that's actually a really really good point. But I agree with you. I don't think that there should be two separate tests or two separate qualifications in order to hold the position, because there are some women that perform very comparable to men, if not identically to men, especially on the police force. I had drawn the comparison to the army and the differences between men and women in the army, but um it's not, it's a physically demanding job, but it's not like going through boot camp. So I don't see them having a problem competing at the same level as a man.
Right.
So I think that that
Yeah,
would
but see,
help a lot.
yeah, see, like in the military, because I've been in the military. So in the military, even the personal training aspect for a man is different than a woman. So the males don't have to, like, their time, like they still have to run 2 miles in a PT test than as like the males, but the males' time is lower than a female's time. Just like the push-ups and the sit-ups, the males' total will be higher than the females. Which I mean, I wouldn't honestly, like, I wouldn't be upset about it. It's not really that big of a deal. But if you were to say that the males had to do, say, 60 push-ups in a certain amount of time, and then you give the women 60 push-ups in that same amount of time, it's like how much higher are you raising the bar for the women who, I mean, I'm not gonna say all aren't as physically strong as men, because there are some that are,
Right.
but most of them really aren't. So if you do that and put men as equal to women and like the physical aspect of things, then you're not gonna really. It's not really gonna equal out. You know what I mean? Like a lot
Yeah.
of women are gonna fall off, but you will have some that can do it. As far as like men, most of the men can do that. You know what I mean?
But should we really consider that discrimination just based on physical limitations? I know this is just a tad off subject, but it got me thinking just now about, would it be such a bad thing to have the best of the best? Isn't that what we claim our police force, our army corps, our navy, and so on, etc.? Shouldn't that be what they are, the best of the best? And if some don't make the cut, have we really gotten that soft as a society that we can't understand that sometimes we just aren't the best?
Um, I would have to say no, because just because, okay, so I'm gonna explain it like this. So if I can do more push-ups than you, right?
Uh-huh.
So say if I get 2 minutes and I have to do 60 push-ups and you're supposed to do 60 push-ups, and I surpass my 60 push-ups, but you still do your 60 push-ups, it doesn't make me better than you, right? Because like I'm a guy, I'm supposed to be able to do these things,
Right.
and you're a woman and you made it to your 60 that you probably normally wouldn't do.
Right.
So that doesn't make me better than you. So that just makes me good, and it makes you good, right? So
That's
that
what I
means,
would think.
yeah. So that basically means that both of us more than qualify to do what we are supposed to do in the military. But you can also, even if you're not physically as strong as me, you can also be mentally stronger than I am, right?
I could concede
So
that.
that doesn't. So it doesn't. Just because you can't do what I can do as a male doesn't make you less stronger or less mentally than I am, or makes you less capable to do what you went into the military or the police academy to do.
Okay, so I kind of get where you're coming from. Like we said before, using the masculine and the feminine nature of human nature in order to accomplish the job, and not focusing so much on a physical aspect over what somebody else might bring to the team.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Like I said, that definitely makes sense. Absolutely, and I could see that. You know, I think I was thinking more along the lines of the women who don't make the cut and go home, with their feelings hurt because they didn't meet the bar of expectations.
Right.
We're going to get into a couple really difficult questions. Here's the meat and potatoes of the segment, so they say in the big leagues. But
That's my favorite part.
moving away from the male and female aspect, we are going to walk into the racial aspect of it. According to, all these community leaders, lots of black celebrities, the Pew Research Center, there's a lot of polling data out there that black men are especially likely to be imprisoned. And BLM is on this railing really hard that it's about systematic racism and uses the data that's on the books to show that it's more about the system targeting a group of minorities as opposed to maybe interpreting this data in a more substantial manner, such as, having single parent households or self retaliation codes, lack of cooperation with law enforcement officers and community habits, things that are going on in the community. What's your take on how these numbers are being projected out into society?
Okay, let me just say this one thing. Um, as as a as an African American man growing up, whether whether or not I was giving the same opportunities as a Caucasian male, it doesn't matter because even before I was born and way back before, the system, I would say, was never really designed for a African American to succeed. And if we were to succeed, then we would have to work double as hard, do double the amount of work, and not saying that those things couldn't happen because there are definitely a lot of African American men, African American women that have done that and they have succeeded, and they are probably living their best dreams of whatever that they're doing, right?
Right.
So, but there are people who haven't necessarily done that. So there are there are people like me. Like, I'm not rich, but I'm not. At the same time, I feel like I'm at a spot in my life to where whatever I didn't accomplish in my life up until now is nobody's fault but mine. Basically, meaning whatever opportunities that I didn't take or whatever opportunities that I didn't work hard enough to take is nobody's responsibility but mine. And this is me saying this as an African American man. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm not to where I want to be because of systematic racism, because of whatever. Whatever I didn't accomplish in my life is because of me. Whatever the choices that I made is all because of me. Now, what anybody else says, where there are a lot of people that say that the system wasn't designed for African Americans. That's true. But at the same time, there are a lot of African Americans who have basically made their own systems. And even even now in 2020, there are still a lot of black people, whether it's men or women, they're out here and they're like, hey, this isn't working for me, trying to do it their way or trying to get myself into the situation of Caucasian people or whatever you want to call it, that I'm just going to build what I know how to do and I'm just going to do it myself and make myself a millionaire or popular or whatever, right?
Oh
So,
yeah. I really liked, and this is the part of the segment, the last segment that we tried to record that I really wish that we had gotten on tape because we talked about this, and where I can see where you're coming from, where people would feel that there was systematic oppression based upon their inhabitants. We talked the last time about the difference between a racist and prejudice, and I think that
right,
a lot of prejudice gets confused with racism, and racism from people gets confused with systematic racism. So we conceded the last time that there's not necessarily any type of standing racial laws. Like there's no more divide based upon the color of somebody's skin, but there are still pockets of the country, like you said, that have either prejudiced people or
mm-hmm,
blatant racist people working in the system and using
right,
that to their advantage. And I thought that was a
right,
really good point that we both made, because a lot of us look at it from, oh well, there's no racist legislation out there, so the system can't be racist. And
no, like you're never gonna find laws, like legit laws in the books that you're gonna read and be like, oh, that's racist.
right,
No, you're not going to find that. Like the systematic racism issue is not a law.
necessarily with the
It's just
system, just the people in
right.
it. Right.
It's just the people in the system that treat other people differently or try to hold them back because of what they want. It's not it's not a law. It's what these people want, and they don't want another. I'll say it, another group of people of color or whatever to advance to what they have, right? So, and then we just feel like that we just, and this is what I hope, that we just feel like, that we have to work harder, we have to do more, we have to push a little bit longer than other people to be able to reach the heights that other people have. Now, it's not saying that, I mean, I just believe that if you do that, then you should just be just as proud to say that, you know what, the system wasn't really designed for me, but I made it. So basically, like, I'm, I don't even know if I can really say this, but like, I'm the shit and I made it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a big FU to the systematic racist racism thing. That like, hey, I made it and I did it without your guidelines. I did it on my own, and we're equal. You know what I mean?
See, now I never really even saw it as a race thing personally, because I was just a little, little white girl in the hood, so to speak. And, I always actually considered it more of a classist type of system, so to speak. Like, we say it jokingly, but we're not even joking half the time. If you've got enough money, you can get out of trouble. If you've got enough connections, you won't have to worry about working so hard or pushing so hard. And I've never had that money and I've never had those connections. So it was always hard for me to look at it as a race point of view because I was always in the same boat as the person who was, crying about these oppressions. And I'm like, well, I don't have access to any of that either, but here I am, like you said, pushing forward, trying to work my way around the system and get to the top. So,
Right.
when I say hood, I know you and I know what we're talking about, but we're
Right.
we're talking about, neighborhoods with great depression. There's
Uh-huh.
not a lot of ambition in and around the area. There's a lot of empty houses. There's a lot of drug abusers. There's a lot of drug pushers. There's a lot of dangers on every street corner. And in my opinion, like I said, that's kind of why I never looked at it as a racial oppression so much as, it could possibly be a classist oppression.
Yeah, I actually I agree with that. Like it's more but I would say it's kind of both because like say and I actually heard of this probably like a couple of weeks ago, and this actually really pissed me off, and it's not even necessarily racial, but it's kind of racial and gender, I would say, because this. So I heard this one guy say that he got upset because a black guy and a female were put over for a position that he felt like he was more qualified for because the company had to fill a
Diversity
quota,
quota.
yeah, exactly, a diversity quota. And I didn't say anything because like I try to keep myself
Away
like
from the
out of
topics we're
situation.
discussing tonight.
Right, like I tried to keep myself out of that situation because I knew if I would have got into that conversation that it could have went in a different place that I wasn't really trying to go at the moment.
Right.
So basically, like I just listened to I just listened to what he had to say, but in my mind, and I'm like, who are you to say that they weren't just as qualified that you were? Like just because you're Caucasian doesn't mean that that black man or that woman, whether she was white, black, Spanish, or whatever, isn't more qualified than you. You're just upset because you were passed over by that man or woman. But you don't really know if they were more qualified than you were. You're just saying that because you were trying to use your privilege to overtake what they can do because they can definitely, damn sure, be more qualified than he was. But because he feels like he was entitled to that position, whether he was there longer or whether he was trying to use his color, which he might not have been trying to do. It might have just been because he was there longer. But just because you were there longer doesn't mean that that man or woman wasn't more qualified than that guy was.
I agree with that in the sense that you don't know the qualifications of another person unless, of course, you're the hiring manager and you know the needs of the company versus what's on somebody's resume or the type of job performance that they do. But that's where I feel that diversity quotas really hurt the movement and just to concede the point that there could potentially be systematic racism. Let's say that there is, but when you start implementing a leg up for instances just like that, like you said, it not only draws away from the accomplishments that those candidates had on their own
Mm-hmm.
merits, but now you're sowing seeds of divide in the company because they're aware that this policy exists and then they take that decision again to their fragile egos and have to say dumb things like I feel like I was more qualified than them. But I mean, let's be realistic. Everybody's been in a situation where they feel more qualified than a coworker to perform a task or a duty, and gets butthurt when the boss doesn't show them, the that little gold star that they want to see.
Right, exactly. I was like, shit, I've been a victim of that at least 2 or 3 times.
Oh, many
So,
times, many times.
right. And like never once have I used the excuse of color or gender. I just basically took it as, well, maybe I'm not doing what I thought I was doing and maybe I should do more.
And isn't that a trap in and of itself? I think that's how a lot of companies weasel extra work out of good employees. And that's just my own personal opinion and through my own experiences. If you don't feel adequate enough to get what you feel you deserve, you instinctively work harder.
Exactly. And which you should. It's like that's one thing that I don't understand. Is like I don't understand why people instinctually go for,
The
oh
low
well,
hanging fruit.
right. Like it should be more of, well, shit, like maybe I should do more, and maybe if I do more, then I'll get more. And which that's always how like I've been. I was like, well, maybe I should do more, then maybe I'll get to where I need to be. And like I said, like I've always been like that, and I don't think other people are.
Well, I don't think that it helps when you have these celebrities that come out and tell the community over and over again from a point of a high tower looking down amongst people of their own color, and they tell them, well, I got here and I worked so hard and I did this and you don't even know what I've been through, so go ahead and blame the system and that's why you can't succeed. How do you feel when you're told by, that elite upper class that, it's not you're not the reason why you can't succeed, it's the system.
Honestly, I don't listen to that because celebrities to me are just basically people who get overpaid to do stuff that
Nothing.
really anybody else can do.
Nothing.
Basically, exactly.
I said, I mean, the
So
biggest one at this point in time that's speaking out is Nick Cannon. And his most recent comments were kind of like, whoa, where did that come from? You come out and attacked a whole group of people, uh and you're doing good, you're doing well. How did you get to where you're going? Why can't you, build the people up with, like you said, if you want to make it simpler on people of your own kind, if that's the way you want to go, that it's a free country, it's still your right to do so. Get out there and start building a ladder for them to climb under your own leadership, instead of coming out and tearing down other people.
okay, so this Nick Cannon situation is to me a little different because even when the protests and things were going on, Nick Cannon was out there. He was protesting with the people. He was letting his voice be known. So Nick Cannon has a podcast where he says some things to where apparently a lot of other people didn't like. Was what he said wrong? Factually, no. And I think that's where he got in trouble because the things that he said, I guess like whatever the company that he worked for
I believe it's
was
Viacom.
basically Viacom, right? So Viacom was just like, we can't control him, obviously, because he's on his podcast saying things. So we can't control him. So the best thing to do is let's just get rid of him, right? Now, it doesn't matter how much money this one individual is bringing in to this company. They feel like he's a problem. Now, honestly, Viacom firing Nick Cannon probably will come down to a very, very bad decision. Probably their worst decision that they'll make, because he had so many shows that he was bringing in a lot of money. Like even the one show that he has, Wilding Out. That show has been on for like 17, 18 seasons, bringing in tons of money. And now, just for that one show, it's gone because you fired him because he wouldn't have, which actually he did apologize. He did come back and apologize, but he wouldn't apologize at the beginning, and then they fired him for it. But now it did come out that he actually did apologize, to where a lot of African American people aren't very happy about it. But you have to, and this is another thing. Like, a lot of people don't understand that he was fired. Like, this is a place he lost. If I'm not mistaken, he lost 3 shows. It was Wild 'N Out. I want to say it was The Masked Singer, and it was another show that I never really watched, but it was like another show that he was on, and he got released from because of his comments. But this is a lot of money coming out of his pockets. I mean, will Nick Cannon still be rich? Of course, because he's rich. But at the same time, he still has a family. He still has bills or whatever. Just because he apologized doesn't mean he's going to get these things back.
No, absolutely not. And realistically, I listened briefly to what he was saying, because honestly, I just can't get over the hypocrisy of these celebrities, where you're in a spotlight situation, you know that there are high tensions, and you're condemning others for doing certain things and saying certain things, and then you come out and you do the same exact thing that you're condemning others for doing, and you don't expect the same retaliation. So I guess I just can't get over the hypocrisy, the level of hypocrisy of some of the words that come out of these celebrities' mouths. Are they that removed from society? Now, like you said, he was out and he was protesting and supposedly commingling with the people, but is it a false sense of security, or is it an egotistical remark? Where does something like that even stem from? Even if you know it to be true in your experience, even now, you and I are speaking freely to each other. I'm not holding back, or stifling myself for
Right.
the savior of your feelings. But in the public eye like that, um just like the police, do you think that you're held to a higher standard, or that you would be looked over because of your stature?
Um, I feel like a lot of celebrities. I feel like a lot of celebrities don't use their celebrity as much as they should, and I also feel like that some celebrities use it more than they should. And I will say that some feel like that they can just say whatever and people will believe them. And then you have,
Alyssa Milano.
and then don't talk about her. I like her. Um, and then you like some people who just kind of like Kanye. Kanye is
Good example.
the prime example of people who just say whatever, and it doesn't even have to make sense. But
True.
because, but because of him being Kanye, people listen to him, right?
Or don't listen to him because
I
it's
know.
just Kanye.
Well, I mean, well, regardless of whether they like what he's saying, they still listen to him. You know
Well,
what I mean? So,
he went kind of crazy there for a little bit, and I think that people were just like, "Oh, he's just going crazy," and just don't pay him no mind. He's lost his mind for the moment. I think he
right.
experienced that briefly.
No, 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 he still has definitely lost his mind.
Well, running for president is a big task. I'm not sure if he's up to it or if he would, for whatever reason, get the job. It would be a real interesting America. I could say that.
Oh, if I really hope that him running for president is a joke.
I can't say yes or no because it is Kanye. We've seen so much of him out of just even the last 5 years that it makes you wonder. It's like, huh? Does money really change people?
Oh no, it definitely does. Kanye has gone absolutely batshit crazy,
I
and
I agree.
but see, like that's the thing. Like you can go crazy, and people will still take you seriously,
True, true.
and that's basically what he has done. And he's probably going to keep doing it until people realize that Kanye is batshit crazy because he is.
So what about like you talked about celebrities that get back to the community and do things with the community. Do you does it really bother you when celebrities in general, people with lots of money, don't give back locally? Say they just, oh well, I donated to autism and then I donated XYZ. Should they really turn that back to the community? Would that help with the animosity of the systematic um oppression or aggression, or however we want to frame that problem in the minority community? Would it help if celebrities got boots on the ground and started from scratch? And I know a lot do, but do enough? I mean, obviously not enough do, if the youth of today still isn't feeling adequate enough to be where they are, where the celebrities claim to come from, and then get to that upper echelon of society.
I believe that the ones who openly speak about it and don't actually do what they speak about, I believe those people should either do something about it or just not say anything. Because if you're, and I think I said this last time, T.I., for example, um, I love his music. I'm a huge T.I. fan, and I follow him on Instagram. But he he says a lot of things on his Instagram regarding this issue, but I've yet to see any pictures or videos of him actually being out there with the people. And I remember this one specific post that he posted, and then somebody commented under it and said, and actually called him out on it. And the only thing that he can say was, he was like, well, I speak. He basically said that he speaks, and he just wants basically people to go out and do what he talks about, but he doesn't necessarily have to go out there himself. And in my opinion, I believe that if you're going to speak about it,
Be
then
about it.
you need to go out there and do it and be about it.
Yes. Yes. And
And
you did say that the last time, and I agreed with you, especially with Ti. And I think we brought up his snitch hotline. I thought that was really kind of funny. You know
Not,
that
not the snitch hotline.
yeah, the 1-800 call a cop or whatever that
I
was.
remember. I remember that. That was like when he had first started. I remember that.
So, you know, that's the first one that came to mind when, like you said, you talk about all these issues and you get the public stirred up, and we go back to the education behind it. A lot of people, I mean, on all sides of the aisle, have animosity about issues, and they look to these celebrities to give them direction on where to go. And
Mm-hmm.
if they don't have them backing them, or they don't have their path to freedom, so to speak, they're really lost and they don't know what to do now that you've energized them.
No, they don't. Like you can't try to be a leader and not lead, and that's what a lot of people are doing.
Isn't
Um,
that just an instigator?
yeah, I mean that's basically what it is. Is you're basically just like instigating people to go do things while you're sitting at home or you're sitting on your $1 billion yacht and watching these things go on. And it doesn't really make any sense. Like I see a lot of people at these protests, like Michael B. Jordan, Young Jeezy. Um, I can never say her name right, and I bet you I don't get it right this time. Oh no, I got it because I saw her earlier on an Instagram video. Keke Palmer. Um, like you see all these celebrities that are actually on their social medias saying that you should go do this and you should go do that. But what makes them different is they're actually going to do it too. Like they're going out there with the people and they're doing these things and they're standing in front of these police officers and letting them know that you police officers aren't serving us because you're abusing us and you're taking your power too far, and like they're out there with everybody else, and then you have people like Ti or 50 Cent, who I love all his shows, I really do, but he's making jokes about these things, and it's like just because you're rich doesn't mean that you're above it.
Right.
Because obviously you don't feel like you're above it because when these things happen, you post about it and you have feelings about it, but you're not out there like everybody else really being in it. You know what I mean? And it's just like the people that listen to them can't really. Well, at least I don't. Like I don't take them serious because they're not out there with everybody else and all the other celebrities with the people that that follow them. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't really take them serious when it comes to it. I just feel like that they're out there just spouting off words, trying to make it seem like they're involved when you're not physically involved. You're cyberly involved, but you're not physically involved.
And honestly, in my opinion, I think that also um kind of turns into negative energy from the fans and from society, because then that classism comes into play again. And even though you're the same skin tone, or you're the same sex, or you're the same classification, now you've got another wall that's dividing you from me because you've got more money than me. So you could say these things and kind of light the grenade and run away, where I'm here to deal with all the fallout. And I'm with you. I don't think that helps anybody in the situation.
I know. You basically have to like Barry White said a long time ago in the song. You have to practice what you preach.
It's true. That's
That was
true.
a great song, by the way. It was a wonderful song.
Well, I think that about wraps it up. Anything else that you wanted to get out there, or?
Um, I just want to say, like, with everything going on right now, um, and I've said this, I believe I said this on my last podcast that I said, just with everything that's going on right now, just lead with your heart. I mean, I guess that's all. That's all I can really say because I feel like a lot of people are doing things, and there's a lot of violence going on right now, unnecessary violence, and people just need to think with their heart, lead with their heart, and act with their heart, and that's the only way things are going to get better. So that's basically what we just need to do.
Yeah, I really I love that. I think that everybody's aware of the golden rule, do unto others. And, I would just like to add to that that, racism, I believe, is a taught behavior, a learned behavior. I don't think that
Mhm.
anybody comes into this world with any preconceived notions of anything. So we all just need to kind of look at each other as, if you were staring yourself in the mirror, and we would be able to act accordingly if we did that more often.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, thank you for having me. I
It was a blast as always.
And we got it all recorded minus some minor technical difficulties.
But we will fix those. We will fix those, and it'll be perfect when
For
it's
the
released.
people.
It will
And
be.
we will catch you on the next one.